Welcome to the Craft of Coaching podcast, where we dive into what it truly takes to become a skilled, confident life coach. I'm your host, Kate, head of the CLCC, or Certified Life Coach Collective, an ICF-Accredited Level 1 coach training program. We combine courage, coaching, and community to offer you more than just a training program, but a life-changing experience where you use your own personal transformation as the learning ground for supporting your clients. On this podcast, we explore how you can use coaching skills to support your clients or expand your own growth, all grounded in evidence-based coaching practices. Learn more about our program and get free resources for becoming a life coach at teamclcc.com. And now, here's today's episode. Today's episode is going to be all about how you can become a great life coach. And even in that title or that topic, I'm aware that there's some potential for people to feel a little triggered. Phrases like, how do I become a great coach? How do I become better? They implicitly carry the weight of performance culture, which is really pervasive. These words, great, better, good, can sometimes feel like they're reinforcing the very paradigm we're often trying to help our clients break out of. This idea that you need to constantly be hustling and striving and trying to be the best and trying to be better and trying to be perfect in order to be worthy. And of course, that is not at all a paradigm that I support. I have been conditioned into it just like everybody else. I'm human. Talking about being human is something you'll notice as a thread throughout all of the Craft of Coaching podcast episodes. If you don't know already, I have another podcast called the Your Courageous Life podcast. I talk about my humanity in that one as well. So very big on the idea of getting away from that paradigm. And yet at the same time, it is a wish that I know many people have when they become a coach to know that they are a great coach. So that's why we're going to talk about that today. This getting out of these paradigms that doesn't work is one of the reasons why in the Certified Life Coach Credential program, or CLCC program, we place such a strong emphasis on doing your own personal growth work alongside learning the coaching skill set and becoming a coach. Our trainees work on themselves as part of learning how to be coaches, so then they have that self-awareness around decoupling from these old, outdated ideas. You really have to know how to separate the difference between having high standards for quality for yourself and a constant, never-ending hustling that's really perfectionism or performative. And knowing that difference for yourself is what equips you to support clients in knowing the difference for themselves. We got to be able to recognize it in ourselves to see it in others. So if we're going to have a talk today about how you can become a great coach, we're going to need to talk about how to make sure that we are articulating a healthy sense of greatness. I love healthy striving. I am absolutely that person who wants to push the edge of my own personal potential, but it needs to be healthy. So you need to have your own self-awareness to articulate this for yourself before you can support clients. If you've ever felt like maybe you're not a good enough life coach, or if you're considering becoming a coach and you're wondering, would I be any good at it? Let's just go ahead and call those thoughts what they are: an expression of your fears. This is a fear of inadequacy, and it's a fear that likely shows up in other places in your life too. And here's the thing, you're normal, you're human. Everyone has some version of this fear, myself included. Instead of trying to pretend as if we have all the answers or that we're not afraid, let's be self-aware, let's acknowledge the fear, and let's work with it and practice courage. Let's get to the heart of this common fear that as coaches, maybe we're not good enough. And instead, practice courage, the actual practice of it in your coaching. And as you coach yourself on this and do your internal work, like we guide our CLCC program participants to do, you'll shift and change and start aligning with a healthier definition of striving for personal potential and greatness than that hustle and perfectionism of that ever moving goalpost, or beating yourself up to try to change, or thinking you always have to be better. The major issue that I see with many coaches or coaches in training who struggle with a fear that they might not be quote unquote good enough as a coach is this. They tend not to trust themselves to handle whatever arises in a session. And usually I can see this fear showing up when I'm observing sessions and coaches have these really tightly controlled sessions, or they're asking a lot of leading questions, or they're hyper-focused on fixing or strategy or offering solutions instead of letting an organic process happen during the coaching session. And I think that when coaches are in that place of not trusting themselves, there's this fear that the session will take a turn they didn't plan for. So the coach compensates by trying to control, trying to prep a lot, trying to plan every detail. Sometimes this shows up as a coach in training asking a question of their facilitator while in training that indicates that they want a guaranteed way to handle certain client scenarios. Like, hey, what's an exercise I can give a client who's struggling with XYZ? As if knowing that this is the exercise is going to mean that they've got the answer for the client. And again, even as that's something that we want to move away from, I want to keep normalizing this and saying it's a totally understandable place to start. We all begin here. When you're learning something new, you ask how to handle the problem. You want control. You want guarantees. That's natural to want as a coach, especially at the beginning. And it's rooted from a good place, which is you want to do good work for your clients. But great coaching is not about checking off a to-do list or control. It's not just about plugging in exercises or tips for your clients. It is certainly not about trying to give your clients guaranteed results, because you can't. That said, great coaching does involve a skill set. It involves skills such as building trust, which is, yes, a skill, active listening, mirroring, asking thoughtful and varied questions, avoiding leading questions that could insert your bias, the ability to pace a session, the ability to let clients stay in the driver's seat and give feedback when things are getting off track in the session, the ability to set a container for strong emotional experiences, to collaborate with your clients on practices or where we go next. So there's a bit of a paradox here, which is that great coaching isn't about rigid structure or rules, but it also absolutely requires strong skills like the ones I just listed. And at the heart of that really is that great coaching is about meeting and being with the client wherever she's at. And that requires self-awareness, because you cannot meet clients where they are at if you haven't practiced meeting yourself where you are at. The work of investing in your own process is really what I think helps you as a coach trust that you can handle whatever comes up in a session. Again, that's why we center so much alongside learning the actual skills of coaching. We center so much of your own personal growth in CLCC as part of that learning process. So, having made my speech about that, let's talk about some of the key elements that trip coaches up. What are the things that keep coaches from really showing up and moving into being the best coach that they can be in a healthy way in a session? So first things first. First thing that can stop a coach from truly moving into this space, I think, is comparison. And again, super normal when you are first starting out. Coaches often compare themselves to others, usually based on perceptions. This happens a lot when you see other coaching websites. They seem like they have really polished branding. They're creating social media content, and it all just looks perfect. They're saying all the wise things. They're articulating things in a really clean way, whereas maybe you in a session struggle a bit more to articulate what you're really trying to say. The branding looks so good. The photos look so good. The messaging looks so good. And you think they must have their life together and they probably are book solid as a coach because they are amazing and I just suck. And I'm going to be real with you. I have had some coaches in training even share that. They thought that about me. They've seen my branding at yourcourageouslife.com or my book, The Courage Habit, and they assume that I've got it all figured out. And first of all, let me just say, no, I don't. And if you actually dive into The Courage Habit or listen to the Your Courageous Life podcast, and certainly if you were coaching with me as a client, I'm very transparent about this. I'm very human, and I will always be very, very transparent about that. You should know there are absolutely coaches out there that are actively cultivating that image of I have all my shit together. They don't talk about their failures or struggles openly. They aren't honest about the fact that they too don't have answers. They actually try to cultivate a persona of I have all the answers. And I see that as a sign that that coach or any coach who does that has not integrated themselves fully. They're partitioning themselves. They're presenting a part of themselves for the world, making that part look perfect. That has to be due to some kind of deep insecurity because we all know that no one is perfect, which to me means they are not fully integrated as a human. They're partitioning, they're trying to shove away the parts that they don't like or hide them. What I hope to model, and what I think that every coach can aim for and can model for clients, is being fully human. Not the coach with all the answers, but the coach who's real, grounded, and human, but who also has a kick-ass skill set. Like I said, I listed off the skills a moment ago. Building trust, the ability to pace a session, putting client in the driver's seat, yet also being able to let a client know when things are off track. Accountability without shame. These are all skills, and I fully own I've got those skills. And I certainly do not have a perfect life. I certainly get tripped up in my own fears. My commitment is to practicing courage. I'm human. And as I said a moment ago, your own ability to meet yourself where you're at, the truth of it, to be real and honest and human yourself, is your doorway to meeting your client where they are. And that is the doorway to coaching greatness. You're going to see a lot of slick marketing online as you look at the other coaching websites. The slicker the marketing, the more perfect the person's life looks. Nope. People who are being themselves truly, they don't need to make everything look perfect. The other way that I sometimes see comparisons come up is in training. Sometimes a coach in training will see another trainee doing something in coaching sessions, and they feel like, wow, that was so amazing, and I'm not as good as that other trainee. And the reality is that every single person who's learning something has sessions that are great and others that just aren't as good. Sometimes I've seen trainees compare themselves to facilitators or coaches who have been doing the work for years. They'll ask questions of me or other CLCC facilitators like, how did you know to ask that question? And my answer whenever I am asked that question in a session that I'm facilitating is always some variation of, I didn't know to ask that question. I followed the client. And that's my honest answer, because I'm not prepping some kind of detailed session agenda in advance. I can't. I have to be present with my client and I have to follow the client in order to see where the session is going to go. I don't know what I'm going to ask or what we're going to explore in advance. And that gets us into another thing that trips coaches up from being the best coach they could be. And it is trying to orchestrate too much, trying to fix the client, or an over-focus on strategy or action instead of seeing the client as a whole person who is in a process that needs to be witnessed. Even if a coach says, I'm not trying to fix the client, deep down, especially when you're a beginner, many new coaches are still thinking about sessions from that lens of fixing problems for clients. And for someone who trains coaches and who, has done, advanced training through the International Coaching Federation for evaluating quality coaching, there's, different types of trainings that are out there, and I have taken those. I start to see it when I observe a coaching session and there's this persistent default to strategy on the part of the coach. Even if the client is giving other cues that indicate other possibilities, other pathways that the session could go down, strategy is what the coach will tend to default to over and over when that's happening. So these are the sessions where maybe I hear a coach say something like, okay, so you're lacking confidence. I'm curious, have you tried repeating affirmations? And to be clear, there's nothing wrong with strategy or tools, but a great coaching session is about your ability to not just offer strategy or tools or insight, but also to be with the client, to guide them towards their own strategic ideas, their own insights. And the problem really with an over-focus on tools and strategy is inevitably you're going to meet a client who can do all the things. They can knock out a to-do list. They can recite the affirmations. They can take the action. And yet they still struggle. They still feel like something's just not right. And in that moment, if you don't know how to go deeper into the client's way of being, that's where the opportunity is missed for a profound transformation that's about much more than just take this action step. So as a coach, you're not here in the session to fix patterns in clients as if they're wrong. You're here to help clients understand themselves, how those patterns came to be, what they've learned, and to set up ways with the client for them to choose what to do next. And I'll go ahead and I'll give an example. People learn best by examples. Let's say you're coaching a mom whose child was just diagnosed with special needs. If you treat that mom or the child or the diagnosis like a problem to be fixed, and you just focus on strategy. Hey, have you tried enrolling at a special school? Hey, what about getting some occupational therapy sessions? Oh, maybe we should talk about setting up a certain family schedule. Well, while all of those things are helpful, you would be missing the part where this client is feeling all kinds of feelings as they navigate through their day. A client in this situation doesn't need just a list of resources and to-dos. That's not bad work to do, but the over-focus on that means you lose the other stuff. Because a client in this situation is probably really trying to figure out how to integrate this experience she's having with her child into her life. How to feel the reality of the fear and stress, but still find joy and fulfillment. She's thinking about how her life is going to change in the future while trying to be attuned to what life is right now. She's thinking about the ways that her child might face more challenges. She might have feelings of fear or worry to walk through, and we don't want her alone in walking through that. She may be over-consumed with caregiving and not even realize that she needs to give herself time to process what's going on with her kid. So let's just pause and recap what we've covered so far. Great coaching involves meeting clients where they are, and you got to know how to meet yourself where you are if you're going to hold space and meet clients where they are. Next, comparisons that are based on perception, especially perfect-looking branding, can be toxic to you and your sense of your own abilities. Comparison to how other people are coaching, same thing. Then trying to fix the client or an over focus on fixing problems, even subtly, gets in the way of presence with the client. And really what it comes down to is a concept we talk about a lot in CLCC, which is how are you coaching the person instead of the problem? Because coaching the problem instead of the person keeps you as a coach on the surface. So now let's come to this question of how you can start trusting yourself more as a coach, because that ability to trust that you can handle whatever arises in a session is so fundamental to really truly knowing that you are a great coach. Well, first of all, by doing your own inner work. I know I've said this a few times now, but it bears repeating. We build that inner work into our CLCC program. You will always be doing inner work as a coach. I continue to do inner work as a coach now, and I've been a coach for almost 20 years, if you can believe it. So keep working with your own coaches. I continue to work with my coaches. I have more than one. Read books that encourage you to explore deep questions. In many ways, this is one of my favorite parts of being a coach, is that the pathway of personal transformation that you probably are already drawn to, that's part of the work you're going to do day to day. You could go through programs. I have one called the Courageous Living Program. It's linked at my website, yourcourageouslife.com. It's a digital program that we offer to CLCC participants. It's included in the program. And it's one that you also, even if you're not a CLCC trainee, you can take. It gets to the root tools of personal transformation. After doing your own inner work to trust yourself more and get into becoming a great life coach. Second, it is really important to remember that every coaching session is co-created, meaning it is created with you and your client. You are not supposed to show up to the session with all the answers. You are creating a container where you and the client co-create for the client to arrive at their own answers. If you're afraid to improvise, afraid to challenge, afraid to go deep, remind yourself as a coach, this is not all on me. I'm not supposed to have all the answers here. Things are going to come up in the session that require improvisation. Challenges are going to come up. I'm going to bring my part and the client is going to bring theirs. We're co-creating this. Third, trust yourself more. When you understand that the so-called negative emotions are part of the process. I just talked about this in a previous Craft of Coaching episode. But to extrapolate on that a little bit further, sometimes coaches think I'm not a great coach if a client ends a session and they're still struggling. That doesn't mean that you failed them as their coach. It means that the client is still in process. And guess what? This is not a sitcom or a TV drama where a problem is presented and it's neatly wrapped up in 30 to 60 minutes at the end of the hour. You as a coach are in control of certain things, but you're not in control of the client's process. You can help the client close out the session with care and clarity. You can normalize emotion for your client. You can say, this is a hard session. It's going to take a minute for you to process through things. You can strategize with your client. Certainly, you can offer to follow up with them, but you can't necessarily fix your client's challenging emotions for them. They may need to spend some time with those emotions in order to arrive wherever they are meant to arrive. And that might be the gift. Fourth, treat the times when sessions feel off or something isn't right as shared moments for collaboration and building trust. Here's what I mean by that. Sometimes in a session, it'll feel like something just isn't flowing, like something's off. And when you're a newer coach, there's a tendency to think, oh my God, I'm doing it wrong. I can tell something feels off in this session. Something's not right. Something's not gelling. I suck. I'm a bad coach. No, there's actually an opportunity for you here. If something feels off in a session, speak into it and try to collaborate a redirect. You're not supposed to be a perfect coach. You're a participant in a co-created coaching relationship. So here's how that might look. Let's say that you are working on something with your client and it feels like the answers just aren't coming. The client's giving kind of short clipped answers. There are long silences that don't feel like the kind of silences where the client is just processing or thinking. Something just, the pacing feels off. And you might say something like, I just want to take a moment. I noticed that right after we finished that slow presence-based exercise, something shifted in the session, and I'm wondering if we can take a moment to see if you're feeling that too and what you think shifted. Right? You don't even have to label it as wrong, like, hey, something feels off here. You can just say something shifted. Do you feel it too? And then if the client's like, yeah, it's just like, I'm not sure what's going on. It's like, I can't collect my thoughts since that happened. Great. Here's your opportunity to collaborate and course correct. Yeah. Right before we did that exercise, you were telling me about what happened at work last week. And it started to feel stressful, and that's why we moved into that presence-based exercise. I'm wondering, what if we revisit what happened at work last week? Do you want to tell me more about that? That's it, right? Like, nobody had to be wrong. It's not you suck as a coach. It's something was off. You spoke into it. We collaborated on how to redirect. And really, that's the kind of transparency in coaching that builds trust, and it models emotional intelligence. You're a capable coach. You noticed that something was off, and you did what you could to shift it. Your job is to speak into that. And, your client also has part of the work in the session. That work for the client is being honest with you about what they need, articulating their desires, making requests for support. You aren't supposed to be a coach who perfectly figures out everything a client needs. They also have to articulate needs. And if you really think about it, no relationship, coaching or otherwise, is a healthy relationship if one person is carrying all the responsibility for how that relationship is going. A coaching relationship actually needs both people bringing their whole selves, and that's part of what makes it so powerful. I'd like to make sure that before I end today's session, I offer you some questions for consideration, especially if you have been really stuck lately in that space of, I feel like I'm not good enough as a coach, or I'm worried that I'm not a good coach. So here are some questions you can ask yourself. Grab a sheet of paper and write them down if you're in a space where you can do that, or pause the podcast and just kind of think about each question, or, come back to these later. And the questions are all ones that are just, let me be self-aware. Let me think about what the skill set of coaching is, and let me acknowledge my humanity. Here's the first one. Am I comparing myself to other coaches? And especially, am I comparing myself to other coaches based on their branding? Is there any part of me trying to fix the client or over-focusing on strategy? Am I coaching the person, or am I coaching the problem? On a regular basis, am I doing my own personal work to become more self-aware of who I am and where I'm at and what my limitations are and where I want to expand and what my patterns are and how I'm counteracting the patterns that don't work for me and all the rest? How am I looking for opportunities to create coaching that is collaborative? Or am I thinking that it's all on me? Do I normalize emotional challenges or emotional difficulty as simply being part of the process for my clients? Am I open with my clients about the fact that I too encounter challenges? Am I willing to speak into it somehow when a session feels off and collaborate with my clients to redirect? When you start implementing these pieces that I've been discussing today, I'm here to tell you, even though you aren't going to be a perfect coach, because no one ever is, you're going to start feeling like, hey, maybe I am good at this. And feeling that way, that's not arrogance, it's alignment. In CLCC, we are regularly high-fiving each other over what we call the coaching high, which is that feeling of flow that you have when you're so deeply present with other humans. And it can be messy, it can be weird, you don't always know where the session's going, but it feels amazing. Being a great life coach does not mean you're never making mistakes. It means you're showing up with your full self. It means owning that this work, this coaching work, is where you feel at home. It means co-creating with clients in a way that's real and honest. So, thank you for being here today, for being willing to explore the vulnerability of, I'm worried that I'm not a good enough coach or that I should be better, or what if I can't do this? Thank you for being here today to look at those questions. And I hope that everything I've presented today supports you in your coaching work and in your decision to be a coach, because the world needs you. All right, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Before you go, would you help us out and take a moment to give us a rating in iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you're listening? It really helps us get the word out to other listeners. And before you go today, would you like free resources to support your coaching journey? Whether you're considering becoming a coach or you want advanced coach skills training, access our coaching resource library at teamclcc.com. Again, that's teamclcc.com. Can't wait to connect with you. And again, thanks for listening.